Okay. Good afternoon and welcome everybody to the Transformation and Improvement Overview and Scrutiny Committee. We have apologies from Dan Thomas, who's substituted by Simon Jones, Tom Biggins substituted by Allcroft, and David Asma, who has not got an allocated substitute. And the two Labour members are
Julia Buckley
and Alan Mosley, who haven't turned up, so I don't know what we're doing about those two. Okie dokie then. So, perhaps before we start, we'll just introduce everyone so that because this is being streamed live. So if we start with Simon, go around.
My name's Councillor Simon Jones. I'm the Shropshire Councillor for the Shrewsbury division.
Councillor Royal Croft, Market Debt, Great Yorkshire Division.
Councillor Rob Gittins, I represent the Cheswardine division.
And what concerns improvement?
Steve Taylor, Performance Intelligent Policy Lead.
Hi, I'm Cecilia Motley, portfolio holder for adult social care, public health and commissioning. No, not commissioning, sorry. Communities, sorry.
Councillor William Butler, member for Tilbury Mortimer, cabinet member for finance and corporate resources.
Noah.
Roger Evans from the London Division.
Sorry, Farrell, St. Charles
Billy Webster, Assistant Director of Efficiency and Transformation.
Ben Jay, Assistant Director of Finance and Technology. I'm Chief Executive, Shropshire Council.
James Walton, Executive Director of Resources and Council Qualified One Officer.
My name's Claire Ward, I'm the chair of the committee and councillor for the Severn Valley.
Tom Dodds, Council Scrutiny Manager.
Claire Bradley, Overview and Scrutiny Officer. Ashley Kendrick, Democratic Services Officer.
And we've just Alan Mosley.
Alan Mosley, Castlefield and Ditherington.
Castlefield and Ditherington was just sat there. Okay, thank you very much. So, do we have any disclosable pecuniary interests of anybody? No? Okay, minutes of the previous meeting. Is everyone happy with the minutes? Roger.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a quick question on page 3. That's the third the way down. It states it's proposed by the chair that Town and Finish Group should be set up to look at adult social care and the issues around discharge, children's services and finance. Is that still in progress or?
Yes, I'll get Tom to answer, but yes, it is. It's the standing committee. Yeah. I don't think we've had the first meeting. We haven't had the first meeting yet, though.
That's the standing committee of this committee, or standing task and group of this committee, which is transformation and moving to financial strategy, which will be also wrap in the budget, but it's making very much those links around adult social care, children's services, and sort of the forward financial view.
Are you happy? You content, Roger?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to move then. If I got a second there. Yeah. Everyone. Show of hands. Thank you very much. Yeah. Okay. We've got no public questions. We've got no member questions. So item number 6 is the financial monitoring report 42/23/24. James. Would you like to put anything up on the screen, or
Can I say a few words then? Can I say a few words to introduce it?
Oh, of course you can, William. Yeah.
Sorry.
Do you want to put your mic on?
Yes, sorry, apologies. Councillor William Butler, portfolio holder, finance and corporate resources. Before the officers come in, I just thought I'd give a few comments, if that's okay. We bring forward the outcome for Q2 as the next chapter of the journey we are on with the MTFS. We must be focused on what we initially agreed as our roadmap for achieving this, which was agreed by Council back in March, where a full list of savings proposals and actions were agreed. As we started the journey, we always said it would be a bumpy road and some changes may have to be made and further obstacles and pressure would appear, and they have. The report in front of you is one of the largest midterm outcome reports that has been reported by this authority, and it provides an immense amount of detail and reassurance for the Council of the work that has been done, what is underway and what challenges lie ahead. This is no mean feat, and days and weeks of work have gone in to provide detailed report by the financial team, which I'm extremely grateful, as it gives us the confidence on our journey, where we have been, what we have done and where we are going. There is challenges ahead and there will be more, but we're not ignoring them and we are preparing for them and always trying to be ahead of the game when we know they are coming and developing counter actions to ensure that we stay on the journey. I'm also pleased around the reserve position that we are projecting, which is within the guidelines of SITFA, but also gives the authority a degree of future financial sustainability. Welcome Scrutiny seeing the report prior to Cabinet and welcome constructive conversations around particular areas. I move the report to be noted. Thank you.
Thank you, Graham. James.
Chair. Just to give a very brief introduction to the Q2 monitoring report, as the portfolio holder has said, this is the report that will be going to Cabinet. So this is the first opportunity for members to review and consider the position as at Q2. So just to remind everyone, this is the standard approach that we take. Each quarter we produce a detailed report which sets out a projection for where we believe we will be by the end of the financial year. The headline, as most people are aware of, is that we came into the year with a £51.4 million spending reduction plan that we set out in the medium-term financial strategy. And as at Q1, we had delivered around about £34 million of that savings target. As at Q2, that has grown to £38 million. So that is the projected saving by the end of the year. So part of that is already delivered and in the bank, and part of that saving is to be delivered. But there are strong and robust plans in place to deliver that. And then the balance, the remainder of that is under review to try and deliver as much of the £51.4 million as total as possible. On top of that, there are then other pressures within the budget, which are not related directly to spending reductions. And all of this is shown in detail, in summary, I should say, in Table 1, which is page 4 of the report. So very quickly run through that Table 1 to give an overall feeling for the position. As at Q2, £51.4 million is the savings target. We've achieved £20.6 million, so that is the saving that is banked and delivered as at the 30th of September. There's a further £17.4 million, which is not banked, but the plans are in place and we are confident that will be delivered by the end of the year, which means that of that £51.4 million, £38 million will be delivered. That leaves a balance of £13 million. The figures in the table demonstrate that we believe that there's probably another £3 million of that, which is almost there and will be there certainly by Q3. And so the figure that's shown as outstanding in the table is a £10.1 million. So £10.1 million of that £51.4 million. At the moment, the plans aren't there strongly enough to demonstrate that will be delivered. On top of that, there is then a pressure predominantly around social care, around demand within the system, which is showing a figure of just over £22 million. So together those figures would show a business as usual kind of do nothing forecast overspend of £32.3 million. That's not the end of the story, however, because we do believe of that £10 million that there is a strong conviction that at least £8.2 million of that can be delivered. That would bring down that overspend. And then there is what we call demand mitigation. So plans in place to deliver the demand pressures in adults and children's over a longer period of time than through to the 31st of March 24. So spread over a long period of time. And we believe that mitigation can bring that back into line. And therefore there would be a short-term reduction that we would build in around about £20 million, £20.5 million. So those actions together would bring the overspend down to £3.6 million by the end of the year. So at Q1, we were anticipating a £5.2 million overspend. At Q2, that's now reduced to a £3.6 million overspend. The bottom of that table is just setting out the reserves position, the general fund balance position. So at the beginning of the year, we had 7.1 million. There was a contribution that was built into the MTFS of just under £20 million, which takes the general fund balance to 27. If we deduct the £3.6 million anticipated overspend, then that would still leave us with £23.4 million of general fund balance as at the end of the year. So it's a difficult position to describe. On the one hand, we've delivered 38 million savings out of the 51.4. On the other hand, we've got demand pressures which are going to be managed over a longer period of time. But then we do have a reserves position which is healthy as we go through the year and looks like it would be reasonably healthy by the end of the year. I'm not going to go through the detail of the report. There is a lot of information in all of the appendices setting out where savings are being delivered, where savings are not anticipated, where there are pressures and overspends and underspends and variances across each of the individual service areas, and more information on top of that. But I'll stop there and leave more time for committee to ask any questions that they wish. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Roger's always got a question. Come on then, Roger, you can go first.
A number of questions, Chairman. There are a number of questions raised by the report. If I stay in the beginning of the report to start with, in 2.8, it says there, this is the first published report in the current financial year, and it also says monthly updates will be provided between these times. This is September. Is there one for October available? If not, when will it be available? Because there are a number of items in this which may be updated in October. Good.
Yes, I mean, I do think, Roger, when you asked this question before, I think the monthly updates were for the corporate directors, but I'll leave James.
So what we agreed to do was to provide a detailed report every quarter, and then there would be monthly updates that would be provided between these times. So the timetable which was set out before scrutiny previously suggested, just to quickly run through that, the October figures, for example. So as at the end of October, they would not be in a position to actually be surfaced in any shape or form for at least 4 weeks, because that's the process by which there's a lot of lines in the budget that need to be reviewed and considered by budget holders. All of that needs to be choreographed and managed. So it's not until the end of November that you even get sight of what the end of October looks like. From that, there is then a series of processes internally to officers to then work their way through that. So we would expect around about 6 weeks after the end of the period end, there will be information that surfaces. That information is not as detailed as the quarterly report in any way, shape or form. And to try and produce that level of information on a monthly basis would the organisation would grind to a halt. So what we provide is fundamentally that view of the big picture, which is the £51.4 million spending reductions. Where are we on that journey? Because to be fair, that was the only question in town at the start of the financial year. So that's what we geared up to ensure that we could deliver a monthly update in relation to where that was. What we can't do is produce all of the level of detail in here. So at the moment, this is the information. The detailed information that will be updated at this level of detail at Q3 to the end of December.
Okay, just let Gwyn say something, please, Roger.
I think James actually said what I was going to say, but
Okay.
I've had conversations with Ben, and I promised to give as much transparency and detail as I could on the quarterly reports. It's the biggest report we've ever brought forward. Talking to the team, this takes the best part of the team 3 weeks to put this report together. There's no way we could do that on a monthly basis. But on a monthly basis, we could get the broad figures. But we can't give you the huge detail, but that can be done on a quarterly basis.
Okay, so right, next question.
That's all I expected. It's a monthly update.
Yeah,
this is a quarter, and
You've got the figure,
thanks
yeah.
for the extra detail that's in it. But I just asked the question about a monthly update, and it would be a broad brush.
Yeah.
I understand that. To go on, as I say, there's a number of questions. I could take a long time asking them, but if we go on to the 212, and it says to address this position effectively, the following measures being put into place, goes down there. And can I pick out in particular the last sentence in B, which says, as such, and where clear long-term plans are set out which can demonstrate success, short-term funding will be made available. This is from reserves, I would assume. So is it being borrowed from reserves as it's short-term funding and not funding as such? The word there is short-term funding. So will it need to be returned? It is a one-off. And how will that be managed in next year? Because looking at next year's in a paper later on, there is a big budget deficit at this moment in time being predicted for next year before any mitigating circumstances come out. And as this is a scrutiny, just like to know exactly what is being proposed there.
James, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll give a broad outline, but Ben may wish to come in and provide more detail as necessary. So what we've described here is the way in which we will manage demand over a longer period of time. And I'm sure I've talked to the committee before about the fact that the 31st of March 2024 is the end of the financial year, but in a sense it's an arbitrary date in the middle of a long-term plan. So what we're looking for is a plan by which we can ensure that we bring together the costs of managing the demand and the available budget so that they align. The point that's being made is that those two things won't align as at the 31st of March 2024, but they will align at a point in the future. That's the way in which the plan is based on a sustainable platform. So by definition, therefore, we will have a position as at the end of the financial year, which we can model and plan for. And that's what we're doing at the moment. That plan has not been completed. I imagine that would be the next question in people's minds. That plan is not being completed. It's being worked on at the moment, which will say at what point will those two lines converge? Where will the level of spend and the level of budget realign with each other? And what will the difference be as at the 31st of March? So let's, for example, say that difference was £20 million as at the 31st of March. What we would then be saying is, well, we know that's not going to continue, that's going to close. So that deals with the longer term position in terms of medium-term financial strategy going forward beyond this financial year. And what we would then be looking to do is minimise that cost. So we'd rather it was 20 million than 25 million. We'd rather it was 15 million than 20, for example. So what can we do in terms of that model? Try and reduce that figure however we can by the 31st of March. Then on top of that, we would then look to see is there external funding that is available that we can manoeuvre and use. And that would be, to answer the question directly, that would be one-off use of that grant. Are there then other earmarked reserves that could be freed up that could be used to, again, manage that situation on a one-off basis? And then finally, after all of those, and there may be other ones in between that I've missed, the final position will be the general fund balance. So what we'd be looking to do is not to arbitrarily say we're now reducing that overspend. What we'd be saying is this is how we're managing that overspend over a period of time which is beyond the 31st of March, and this is the way that we're mitigating it from one-off resources that I've described in that interim position. And that then should give us a more sustainable footing, while at the same time being absolutely open and transparent about the level of pressures within these particular service lines. I hope that answers the question.
One last one, Chairman, then I'll let somebody else finish. Why I ask that is that the Cabinet will be proposing a draft budget in approximately 4 weeks' time. And I don't know where they'll be getting the information from, because obviously it won't be available until the October's update won't be available until the 1st or 2nd week in December. There is a proposal to alternative budgets to come forward. How is that supposed to happen if those who are not part of the cabinet have no knowledge of what next year's budget is going to look like, if there's a predicted at present £20 million overspend and mitigation is wanted? I do also note that later on in today's papers, it shows that the earmarked reserves on April the 1st, 22 was 79 million. April the 1st, 1 year later, earmarked reserves 31.7 million. That's a difference of over £40 million. And if the earmarked reserves are going to be used again to mitigate any reductions in this year's budget, I'm not sure what's going to happen next year. And I don't feel that I can look at drawing up an alternative budget for next year, because we should be asked, I should be asked, Scrutiny will be asked, how are you going to address to deliver a balanced budget for next year? £23 million overspend, earmarked reserves, not sure where they'll be. General reserves may be up, but I'm not sure where. This is a Q2 report we're looking at, but some of the predictions in it raise great concerns about how this council is going to manage this year, yes, but next year there are big questions to be answered. And I'll let somebody else come in after that.
Gwyneth, you want to
Very briefly, the amount of detail put in this report, Roger, actually explains about the earmarked reserves, and there is tables in there that actually show you what the balance of the earmarked reserve will be afterwards. So all the actual information you actually need to do your alternative budgets is almost in front of you. And obviously we have to work on assumptions, and you will have to work on the similar assumptions that we have to work to, but don't cry away from it. That £20 million problem for next year will have to be sorted, and that is the key issue, and I'd like the help of this committee to find out how we will actually sort that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Have we got any more? Julia?
I think so, yeah. Thank you, Julia Burke, meeting of the Labour Group. I share the concerns about it's called demand mitigation short-term funding, 20 million. At this point, we're not sure which of those measures and methods we will use. So to my mind, that's 20 million. We still haven't closed that gap, and we know there's 23.6 coming in April. So there is in fact a gap of 46 million that is yet unsolved. And if we put our alternative budgets forward, and if our top line says short-term funding while demand pressures are addressed and mitigation for 23 million, I'm very sure you'd have something to say about it. So we have to be transparent with each other, don't we? If we haven't found the 20 million, we have to be honest. That's the problem we're still trying to solve. Yeah. And we're all in the same boat on that. My second problem is a much bigger one, and it's demand mitigation. So the work that you've done so far, as I understand it, because the level of detail on where the savings have been made is scant. As I understand it, it's come from two places. It's come from describing work as transformational and thus capitalising staffing costs, which is why you've got high confidence of what it will look like at the end of the year, because it's a monthly salary budget. And then secondly, there's what you call demand management through transformational operation model. When we ask why there's no detail, you tell us that it's not a change of policy, it's a change in how things are delivered at an operational level. So does that mean that the details don't come to this committee? We're not allowed to understand how services are being cut? Because I have to tell you, as a councillor, the casework that is coming to me from residents is describing to me every single day where your officers that you are asking to do this on an operational level, where that money is being cut. So I had a young disabled adult contact me yesterday to say that the transport to her day centre placement is being pulled because the staff have asked her to pay for it herself because of the budget pressures of the council. I have young people that can't get to their placements, that are being stepped down from mental health interventions in schools, people with serious trauma who, frankly, I'm amazed that the young girl is even in school, is being stepped down because the interventions need to reduce, because we need to get kids off these different levels of intervention because of the budget pressures. So I think it's time that we are a bit more transparent about what is actually happening here. Councillors can sit around this table and claim you've not changed any policy, and you can pass the book on to our hard-working staff But at the end of the day, residents understand where you are making cuts and it is really hurting. So I'd like to see more transparency in these reports, some honesty about the cuts you're actually making, and to take some responsibility for the impact that is having on our most vulnerable residents. My final point, I sat in a cabinet meeting 2 months ago and listened in horror when the cabinet agreed that they were going to go to consultation on removing transport from special needs children and low income families. We have waited 2 months for that consultation and it is still not launched. Are you or aren't you removing transport from our most vulnerable students?
Okay, so two things, Julia. The last one, that's obviously out of my remit. That will have to come from cabinet. The other thing you said about, I think you said about the girl that came to you from school. Was that a mental health issue, or I'm just trying to sort of separate the two. When you talk about these things, sometimes it's not so clear cut. Sometimes it's part.
So the family are supposed to be receiving help under early help.
Right.
After 6 months, although they're under the early help, they've still not been given a practitioner. But the early help has enabled them to access support on site, but to be able to return to school in a phased return through specialist support. But every 3 weeks, the family are pressurised to stop that support and return to school. So the stepping stones project to step families down from intervention because it is expensive, and they are being told because of budget pressures that they are being pushed to step down earlier than the families are ready. Families that have had severe trauma. These aren't isolated examples. It's coming thick and fast now from lots of different councillors.
Okay, Graham.
I can't actually, I think Councillor Buckley's perhaps playing a bit of politics here, because I could not see that any of our qualified assessment officers would step people down if they weren't qualified to be stepped down. And sometimes the actual outcomes for the children can actually be better when they are dealt with by the qualified officers and get back into full-time education rather than being constantly on support. Obviously, I can't talk about actual cases, and I think the matter should be, you should perhaps put your issues in writing to Tanya Miles and she can get back to you on individual cases. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to ask, we've got Billy Webster here, who's our transformation AD. So could you answer the first couple of Julia's questions? I know we've got Ben here as well, so feel free to pass it across.
Yes, certainly. So I think the first part of the question was about demand management mitigations. Is that correct?
That's right, yeah.
So the transformation agenda has pulled together quite a number of projects, very specifically looking at managing demand in 2 ways. So we're looking at managing demand coming into the authority by putting in examples like the best start in life to prevent the needs arising in the first place and allowing communities to help solve the problems of those within it. We also have put in place a new front door, so to speak, which is the early health and intervention team. That allows us to quickly identify where there might be emerging needs and stop children becoming in need of our support, because actually that is beneficial for them. What we've also done is pulled together a number of projects that look at the alternative, which is when they come into care and into need, that we have the right interventions for them. And as it happens, actually, the cheaper interventions, i.e. those that are less costly for the council, usually lead to better outcomes for children. So what we've done is put a lot of effort into transforming our fostering service. We're giving them a lot of wraparound support from across the council in order to increase numbers. If we increase numbers of foster carers, that allows us to reduce the reliance on residential care. So those are the kind of projects that we've woven across the transformation agenda and are giving support both from project management, but also enabling services to help children's services do what they need to reduce the costs, but also to provide better outcomes. And we are monitoring that progress. So we're monitoring what the benefits are that we're getting back to show that the investment is worthwhile. And as an example, if we increase our numbers of foster carers, so we've increased drastically the numbers coming in terms of inquiries. If we can convert those, just for 10 additional foster carers could reduce the cost to the council by £2.5 million. So it is significant, and that's why these are areas we want to invest in. And we're doing the same within adults. So we've got needs, and then when we come in, we're looking at how we better work with partners in the third sector to get the right interventions at the right time to those individuals. So I can't comment on the particular cases, but that's what we're doing in terms of that transformation investment and time.
Can I just say, to read the report this morning that we had, people have answered quite a few of your questions. Thank you. Okay.
Yeah. Yes, we did have a very good meeting this morning, and it's been great.
Exactly that.
Ben, would you like to say anything at this juncture? That'd be helpful.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think probably a couple of comments. The MTFS plans for spending reductions around capitalisation staff were slightly over 4 million in the context of 51.4 million overall, and the 38 million we're expecting to deliver within the course of the year. So yes, we're looking at whether or not that is the right level. Can we expand that? But it is a very small proportion of the overall part. It's the 4 million against 38 delivered. It's not the thing that we're leaning on. What we're leaning on more than anything else, I think, is that what we're seeking is the efficiency through transformation, some of which Billy was talking about. How do we make sure that services work in the most efficient way possible? I think there's an awful lot of success that's being delivered around that. In terms of the level of detail that's being provided, the detail which was in the MTFS that was approved by Council in March, the lines from there are repeated with the detail of how they equate to the 38 million in detail of Appendix 3. So there's a number of pages there, and I'm sure that it's possible to cut those numbers, interpret those numbers in all sorts of different ways. What we sought to do there is simply provide clarity, council asked us to do as officers, and as officers, that's that's the position that we've got to at this point. So it's a huge amount of detail, but I think it's important to note that the reliance on staff capitalisation is really quite small as a proportion of the total. The bulk of it is very much around trying to make sure that at all points services are working in the most efficient way possible without impacting on frontline. It's the back office element of that, and there's some examples of that which are included from 8.30 in the main body of the report. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Julia.
Yeah, if I can just come back, I think we all appreciate the long-term shifts, the things that you described around the fostering. That's an entirely logical long-term shift. I'm describing the demand management of current residents that are currently receiving support, who are vulnerable and who are being told that budgets are being squeezed, and that they, in various different parts of adults and children's services, that's the reason that the financial pressure is driving the reduction in the service that they're currently receiving. So the example of the young adult who goes to the day centre, she won't be able to afford to go to the day centre, so she won't have any stimulation in her life, and her family can't afford to do otherwise, but they have no choice. The council are telling them that's how it has to be now because of the situation. Those examples, they're just 2 out of probably, I have 20 from my caseload, and I'm sure the councils have some. They're not describing any of the reports that we receive. We just see the word demand management, and we just see the word to save this money in any way that we can. And that's my point. My point is those are day-to-day decisions that are not strategic, and they are impacting humans. The other point about the salary, and perhaps I misheard you, Ben, but at the start of what you said, I thought you said that the cuts to the staffing budgets, as in the vacancies that were deleted, but actually you meant the salaries that were capitalised. Yeah.
Apologies, I didn't refer.
Perhaps I misheard.
I didn't refer to any cuts to staffing budgets. That's something which has been added in. The point I was trying to raise was around, to your point, around capitalisation of staffing, which was included transparently within the March council papers, and is included again transparently in these papers.
Exactly. So both where we're talking about posts that have been deleted, and where we're talking about staff time that has been capitalised, I think it's useful to hear what percentage or fraction that is of the total savings. It's actually much more relevant for us to understand what proportion that is of the total staffing budget. In other words, what percentage of posts were deleted and what percentage of current staff salaries are being capitalised. That's the more relevant proportion, not from the total savings.
Happy to.
Yes, happy to.
Sorry, so in the budget book, which is also part of the papers from council on the 2nd of March, pay budgets were 144.4 million, I believe. The deleted vacancy posts were vacant, therefore had no impact on any staff.
The value of them as a percentage of the 144.
Trying to recall, I think the initial figures were 3% of the broadly, and we were looking around about slightly under 3 to 4 million around that, but I need to check on that. There were some other vacancies which were identified, which were linked to vacancy factors. So some posts were wholly vacant, so it's possible to delete posts from within the structure without impacting on any staff, because the staff couldn't be recruited or we find difficulty recruiting them, or those posts were vacant. Other posts were vacant due to turnover, so there was an expectation that some of those would need to remain as vacant posts through that process of turnover.
Thank you, 3%, that's helpful.
Okay, so I've got, if you want to come in before Joyce or what's Gwyneth, and then I've got Joyce and
very
then
briefly, I've got listening to what Councillor Buckley's saying. A couple of points just to reiterate. I don't think an officer of this council would change the actual support that somebody's given to an adult or a child without the correct advice, as in with their profession. But also, especially with the adult, they would have a personal independent payments, have a mobility allowance, and they will also have probably some other benefits. And to a certain extent, it becomes a personal choice.
Yeah.
Because I also have to sit here and represent the 98% of residents who pay their council tax. And when we have hard decisions, that's where it boils down to. They have their sources of income and they have to decide how they spend it.
Yep. Yeah, good point, but I'm asking to mention that personal budgets. Okay, so Joyce.
Thank you. Councillor Buckley paints a very bleak picture, saying you have 20 people who contacted you. We all have about 3,000 electors in our area. All right. Oh, you've got 6,000. You've got a double ward.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. What I'd like to say is that actually in my ward, I've not heard from anybody regarding service cuts to vulnerable people, not one. So I just want to put balance there, because you're painting a picture that I don't recognise. I'm sure there are people there are issues with, but I don't see that. Thank you.
Mind you, Julia has been travelling around quite a lot. I mean, she was near your patch the other night, wasn't she? Anyway, okay. So, I don't.
Chair, if we just say, Chair, in the last 2 years, I'm looking at my casework spreadsheet now, I've had 739 casework inquiries in 2 years. So it's possible that I have a higher rate of casework because I am quite visible in the area. So I don't know how many you've had in the last year.
Come back on that. I've just got we have an equal number, I guess.
Yours are all fake.
But as I say, I do not recognise that. I think you're exaggerating. I'm sorry.
Yeah, okay, so we're gonna leave it there. Seek and you will find, I think, is the thing. Okay, so Roger, you want to say something?
I had one case in my area which has also contacted Julia, and Julia has copied me into her reply, and we're both chasing it up, which is a person similar to where Councillor Buckley referred to. But what I asked about is coming to these papers here, scrutinising. If we look at page 25 and page 12, there are the projected revenue outearned by services. And it's showing that the people, overall, £25.4 million pressure, People Directorate, continued to be driven by higher than anticipated demand. How is that being managed to do it? I've heard the word demand management. Is it being done? You've got place where it says overspend of 4.3 million, resources, an overspend of 3.2 million, I think, health and well-being, an improvement. Corporate, 454,000 in corporate. They're listed on page 12. And then on page 25, there is a little bit more detail there, but there's nothing there saying how it is being managed. Not a scrutiny and looking at and seeing what's happened at other local authorities in England, where members have been kept, my words, in the dark. They have not been provided with the detail. They provided with words which say it's being managed and being looked after, but there's nothing behind it that the members are aware of. This is a scrutiny committee, and a scrutiny committee is entitled to look at any papers unless they're in preparation held by this authority. And if that is known how this is being managed, the scrutiny committee has a right per the Constitution to see those papers, and we're not being shown it. So if it's known how this is being mitigated, I would like to see them.
Okay, so back to you, Billy, because you're doing a lot of that work.
Yes, Chair. I would suggest that there is detail in the report that goes through the individual examples where we are seeing demands being managed. So there will always be an increase in demand because almost every council in the country is facing increased demands. The population's getting older; they need more support, and we have growing population of children that are coming into need in most councils. So we're no different. What we're seeing is demand that is higher than we'd like and that is higher than we can afford in the future. So all of the mitigations in the transformation agenda, and a lot of them are outlined in the demand management section within the papers today, provide examples of where that work's being done. But I would be more than happy to provide the detail of the transformation programme and show the specific projects and what their interventions are looking to deliver, because they are looking to manage demand so that it's manageable and then decrease the costs, but not through removal of interventions, which is a surprise, but I understand that's what you're seeing, but that is not anywhere in the transformation agenda. It's not about care packages, but it's about different types of interventions that add and kind of provide better independence, etc. So we can provide that detail, but some of it is already within the report, Chair.
So Ben, you want to say something?
Thank you, Chair. And just to support what Billy was saying, there was a lot of work in the drafting of the report to provide some further insight into what that demand management looked like. And those are the paragraphs from 8.9 in the body of the report. Paragraphs 8.9, 8.10 through to 8.15 give some general outlines and some more detail on the kinds of causes of demand that Billy was just referring to. I think to respond to the point that you're just raising, Councillor Evans. So some examples: paragraph 8.16, Beth started in life, and that's about with children's services, working with new parents and their families to give them the skills and support to reduce the likelihood that children becoming in need of care, CIN, or looked after, CLA. But clearly we can provide further detail around it, but I would hope that actually that sentence probably captures quite a lot. And the paragraphs that follow are similar. Early help, a kind of more careful focus of the early help activity, other work around making sure that the care for individuals is safe. This is the paragraph 8.18 and so forth, looking at making sure that the stepping stones where it is safe to step individuals down. I can't comment on the details of individual areas because I'm an accountant rather than a social worker. But the point around, from my perspective, looking at the overall budgetary position, is there's an awful lot of work going on there to help mitigate some of the demand pressures. The details carry on through from 8.20, where we start looking at the position in adult social care, including the work around working age adults, which is an important part of the pressures for us. Less in terms of number, but often greater in terms of need, and looking at different pathways, working with easier ways to access a paragraph 8.23, looking at the front door approach. So when people start to realise that they need some support, what's the easiest way to signpost them towards some of the services which they might be able to access. So there's a whole wealth of detail. It's not perhaps all the detail, Councillor, that you were looking for. I think there is also further detail that was surfaced in the People Scrutiny Committee this morning. Ladies nodding, so that's good. But I think there's a paper there which could well answer some of the further questions that you might have. I hope that helps with the.
And I think, hold on a minute, I think in fairness, a lot of this could be dealt with in the task and finish group because we've got more time to have a high level of detail. So Julia wants to come back. Very much. Rob's wants to speak as well. So let Julia say, or Roger follow up, and then go on then, because Rob hasn't said anything yet. Go on then, if you want to intervene.
8.34. Further improvements are anticipated from review. What are they? Turn over the page. 8.25. So a new at-home model is being created. What is it? 8.30. Slight changes in the forecast as the year has developed, increasing numbers of children. Okay. And then 8.19. It says innovative ways to recruit and retain foster carers. I understand what you have just said. 8.24, we have started working with other agencies across the wider health and social care. No details, just words. 8.13, we are seeing a growth in children becoming due to the legacy of the COVID, doubled in the last 5 years. And there are other places in it where the words are there. We're doing this, we're doing that. We are a scrutiny committee. I want to scrutinise what is actually happening.
And can I just intervene? Yeah, we did all that this morning. We did all that this morning in
People Scrutiny.
People Scrutiny.
Sorry, Chairman, it's on the agenda today. I had a local session with the new Connect Buzz and I was from 10 till 12, so it was impossible for me to even view it at all. This is a transformation and this paper is before this committee today. So with the answers we're given this morning, I won't see them for another 3 months.
Now, hold on. Did you read the papers from this morning? Though you read the agenda for this morning.
It's only in terms of
report. This is the.
Only in terms of reference for the prevention strategy, demand management. Presumably, you had a conversation in the meeting, but the paper in advance is just in terms of reference for the task of thing.
And I think that's the difficult one. Do you want the 50-page report, or do you want the shorter report? How long do you want reports?
I want to scrutinise the information, which is what this committee should be doing.
Okay, so I'm going to ask, did Ben, Jay or Billy know what Roger's referring to in this report? Do you want to just, okay, so if you could just explain that to him.
Just very briefly, it's a finance report which is geared to covering the totality of the finances of the council. We seek to respond to comments from councillors to increase the level of detail where possible. It's often not possible to provide service level detail on some of the points that you're raising. On the base, and that's not, some of the points I think you're raising, you almost answered your own question in a sense, and it was a sense of you pointing to the paragraphs and understand what you're saying, where's the further detail behind it? The further detail behind it is with the service areas and with other scrutiny committees and with other committee papers. I've got 50 pages of report which cover all sorts of different aspects of revenue spending, capital spending, ring-fence grants, non-ring-fence grants, other types of reserves. It's not appropriate to expand all of those sentences into lots of detail. It's simply not possible within the scope of it. However, if there is an ask from the committee to provide further information back for scrutiny, I'm sure that could be arranged, or it could be better worked out through a different part of the scrutiny arrangements.
Okay, so thank you. Gwilym, did you want to say?
I basically was going to say what I was going to say. You need to decide as a committee how you need to deep dive, but there has to be an element of trust with the staff here that we are actually delivering to what is said in the report. We as elected members are not here to do the day job, but you are here to scrutinise, but just to deep dive maybe backwards to see if the outcomes were correct, but also maybe looking forward to how you can help change things in the future and perhaps get over some of those financial difficulties.
Did you want to say one last go, Julia?
Yeah, it's a different comment really. It's in Appendix 1B. It's page 2 of that, which is page 26 overall. I don't know whether this is also something that was discussed this morning in people. I hope that you have some more explanation on it. I'm just very disappointed to see at this point in the year £1.624 million overspend on staffing due to agency social workers. We'll all remember last year we scrutinised you and we asked why there was an overspend of £1.3 million for social workers. We, at William's invitation, brought forward an alternative budget proposal which would avoid that by paying our own social workers a higher rate and by arranging a contract with our neighbouring authorities so that we would pay the same rate as each other and improve their conditions. I know you're going to tell me that you have a trainee programme which brings the new people on stream, but looking in front of us, here we are a year later, the problem has increased from last year. So a problem we identified, a solution we offered, a discussion where you assured us it was a one-off. We are looking at an exacerbated situation now. So in total, that's £3.5 million that has been spent on agency workers rather than investing in our own staff. And if we remember again what this is all about, it's those residents who are receiving these services. It's got to be about continuity of care and building a relationship with vulnerable people. Agency workers by default are the opposite of that. I'm really disappointed to see that again.
Okay, so a couple of things. I have asked the question, and we can look at this task and finish group. I have been reassured that our percentage of agency social workers is below our statistical neighbours. I think if you could go away and come back to me with a letter from the leader of the council over there that says they will pay exactly the same to their social workers as us, and present it to the cabinet.
I would willingly do it. If you agree that we pay them more, I would gladly do it with a
but hold on a minute. If you're saying, that everyone should pay them the same, and it doesn't work like that.
If you pay them more but the same, it will work. The problem is they are paid less.
Yeah,
so if we all agree to pay our social workers £500 more,
the problem will be the same. We can look at that in the task and finish group. Gwyn.
Happy to help you with that task.
Just a brief point of information. As chair of West Midlands Employers, we obviously talk about this across the whole region quite a lot. The problem is the actual agencies themselves and the price they actually pay. Just by paying more will not solve the problem, because there will still be staff who don't want permanent contracts and will just want to work on an agency basis. The other problem we have is we actually work on a completely different pay scale system to Telford and Wrekin, and to bring that in line is simply they'd have to change the whole organisation, or we'd have to change the whole organisation. Believe me, I've asked them, bear with. Now, what's
Stuart's going to solve the problem? Don't worry, Gwyn.
What West Midlands Employers have
Looking
done,
forward to the letter. With pleasure.
they have set up a group of all the local authorities and have set up their own agency through Opus to actually look at actually cutting the agency market. And if we actually cut the agency market, we're already seeing in the local authorities that have taken up the opportunity, they are converting far more people who are on agency staff to full-time staff. So I don't personally, I understand the ethos and why you want to do it. From being on West Midlands Employers, I've mentioned it, they said it wouldn't work, but there are other ways we can do it.
I could just say, we don't need to be on the same salary scale. I used to be a union rep. I'm describing that we pay them the same amount of money. It really doesn't matter if ours is called salary point 3 and theirs is called salary point 7. What simply matters is that they are paid the same. And crucially, Chair, which is why it hasn't worked thus far, that they are paid more than they currently are. And actually, it's not just about pay, it's about their working conditions, that they have more time off, that they have not just numbers of days annual leave per year, but that if we have a full complement of staff, that they're not required to do this extra shift to cover for their colleagues. So if you really want me to go and do that, I will gladly go and speak to neighbouring authorities and secure that letter. But I have to be honest, in fact, we can put it into our alternative budget. So once again, you can criticise us for it. And then next year we can sit and look at it saying £2.5 million overspend. But it's a practical thing. By paying people more up front, we're employing them directly instead of paying more. I agree with you, William. The problem is the agency. Absolutely. The nature of the agency is to charge. That's why we should not use them.
Okay. Cecilia wants to come in. She was asking a.
It's just that Councillor Buckley rather sweetly seems to imagine that the place world out there is swimming with some people who want to be social workers. And that, unfortunately, Julia, is not the case. Otherwise, I've no doubt we'd have a lot more of them. And that's why we have to supplement from time to time with agency staff. We don't like doing it. We much prefer our own staff. But to be honest with you, I'm afraid they do not grow on trees. And as you know, both care workers and social workers have been in terribly short supply. They are not back up to numbers yet. So, you know, much as we'd love to do this, and it's a brilliant idea, it ain't going to work at the moment.
Right, thank you. Right, that's it. I'm going to stop there.
If I may, in any other sector of the world, when you struggle to recruit, there is the age-old solution of market forces. If we couldn't find a director, we would add market forces and we would pay them more. And I'm simply saying that if we paid social workers more, they would grow on trees.
I'm not, okay.
You live in a
we've
lovely
done that to
world.
death. Hold on a minute. Rob has been very patient. Joyce has got a point she wants to make. But
On that.
yeah, go on then. If you want, you can say.
For those, I'm switched off.
Cecilia, can you switch off?
So sorry.
For those of you who haven't been around as long as I have, or on Mosley, I remember when I first got in this council, when we went unitary, there was a shortage of workers then, and we actually advertised abroad. You'll remember it probably, James. We were advertising abroad to try and attract people to come here. So it's a long time coming.
Okay, I'm going to put that one for now. Okay, Rob.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you much, Chair. Councillor Rob Gittins. Just got a quick question with regards to a appendix to page 1, which is to do with government grants. Do we have any news yet on government grants? And are these and the figures that are in the report, are they based on a forecast from last year's figures? If so, have they been adjusted for in inflation? And or what talks have officers had with government with regard to grants? Thank you.
Who's going to take that one? Do you want to do that, Ben? Yeah.
So in terms of the current year position on grants, the vast majority are coming through very much as anticipated. There's been some additional funding which has been announced in year. So after we set the budget, particularly around some of the hospital discharge work and the supporting the market for social care. So there's been some additional small amounts. We are waiting on tenterhooks for any announcements coming through next week. Through the autumn statement, but there may well be some extra funding potentially through the winter. That's not unusual. At the moment, we're not booking any of that into the position because we simply haven't seen anything further. What we know about has all been played in.
Okay, Roger, and then that's it.
Right.
Oh, sorry. Okay, yeah. After, let Alan go first, Roger. Yeah.
No, I don't give way to.
Oh, go on then. Go on then, Roger.
He's older than me.
Yeah.
Seniority just I should have said even.
I like it. Go on then, Roger.
Thank you. On page 14, there's a spending reductions in year. There's a table, and then in 8.8, it says that 8.2 million, which are still to be identified or slipped in delivery. So is there any information on that? And then on page 41, and the following 2 or 3 pages, there's a list of different reductions. Target operating model appears in a number of different departments do it as in red, failure to deliver. But in there is a perfect number, and on it in another area where it says in progress, there are very few that say delivered. So those are the sort of ones which I think we should need more information about. Are they going to be delivered or not? Are the red ones that are there? For example, here, target operating model, staffing budget turnover and wastage increased by 5%. 1.5 million pounds is in the red. Target operating model strategy, getting leadership right, cashable benefits, £600,000. And there's quite a few in the different departments which says a target operating model is in the red, not going to be delivered, I assume. But how are we doing it when you look at 8.8 and bring that back here, which are still to be identified or slipped in delivery? And if one looks at the table above it, under review, £13.4 million for this year's budget. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, Ben, you're happy to take that?
Happy to take that, Chair.
Yeah.
I think that the simple answer is that at the midpoint of the year, a lot of the savings where there were early plans in place to deliver have been delivered. We've moved forward quite strongly in lots of different ways to be able to get to the 38 million anticipated delivery by the 31st of March. The under review in the appendix, they're categorised under the red. They're not yet being delivered. Under review means exactly what it says. We're looking at it to see very simply, is that something we can still do in that way? Can we do it to that extent? Or is there an opportunity to replace it with something else? There's clearly a degree of risk around that. The anticipation is that we should be able to reduce that current area of non-delivery of about 13.4 million, which is set out in table 4, exactly as you say. The anticipation is that we should be able to reduce that so that there is a delivery of around about 8 million. Which is what it sets out at 8.8. That is in progress. We're working that through to some extent line by line, but also looking at new opportunities as they present themselves. So I would expect that figure, currently about 13.5 million, to drop down by something around 4.5 million by year end. But at the moment, that is an estimate based on some of the early work and the early review that we've been undertaking. I understand your point. You'd like to be able to scrutinise that. In all fairness, I'd love to be able to scrutinise that as well, because that's something which is in progress and is working through having done the 38 million, which it also sets out in that table at 4. Completely reasonable question, completely understand the point. Don't have an easy answer for you other than to clarify that that's what we're also working on.
If I can, is there any idea when more information, more definite information will become available? Because that is what we need.
As we said in the report, there'll be further more detail in the December MTFS update.
Okay.
It's ongoing.
Right, so
I would be led by the figures the officers are giving you the indication of the periods, how much is actually being achieved, if that makes sense.
Okay, so I've got a very eager youngster on my right. Question.
Don't need to be rude.
But that was the right bit, was it?
You're going to spark me up a bit in a minute. But Rob sparked me up talking about government funding.
Oh, here we go.
And I've also got in front of me. Sorry. I've also got in front of me a comprehensive chart showing the way in the government funding for every authority in the country and the way in which it's changed over the last 10 years. And for Shropshire, it shows that in the real terms, reduction in government funding since 2010 as a percentage is 62%. Less, obviously. And that is what's happened during the term of this current Tory government, your Tory government. And we sit here admiring the efforts that officers have been making, talking about cuts in expenditure and some of the tragedies that has brought for individual families and communities. And we haven't mentioned yet that this is Tory government strategy. Now, in the past, and Joyce will remember, and Roger certainly will, we used to have Peter Nutting and Keith Barrow talking about the pressure that they've been trying to put on government ministers and meetings with people throughout the country to try and bring pressure to bear. Don't hear about that anymore, and I wonder why. You are soon going to go out canvassing for various prospective parliamentary candidates who are going to be, if they're elected, support the current regime and the current policies of the government of the day, if they are elected, obviously. So are you a bit ashamed of yourselves in this situation where the main cause of the austerity, the main cause of the difficulties for the residents of Shropshire is brought about by government policy, central government policy. And that is your government policy. And are you proud of it? And are you going to pursue and encourage more of it in the coming general election?
Brilliant. Thank you, Alan. It's really good to see you. It's an interesting one because I actually walked up the street to turn your mic off somebody.
Sorry.
If I walked up my high street and spoke to people and I said to them, we've had our budget cut by 68, and I do it to parish councils by 68% by central government, and they understand that. And I actually say to them, potholes might be delayed a bit, but I said, are your bins still emptied? Your street light's still working? Do you see any difference? And they actually say, no, we don't. And that is the majority of the people.
Not in Bridgenorth.
No, they're forgotten.
Are you talking to the cows or something?
No, it's true. I guess services in the south may have been a lot less than the larger market towns, so our expectations might not be as high. But generally, people do not see a major difference. So it actually makes you wonder: is that money better spent by central government putting it into the health service?
If only they'd done that.
Yes, well, and the other question, I guess, Chair, is it'll be interesting to see what the Shadow Chancellor does if we do have a change of government and where the money comes from to give us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Right, well, I think we've batted this round enough now. Is everyone happy that we note this report? Everyone happy? Yep. Show of hands, really? Yes.
Just say that is with the additional documents that we've asked to see. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Right. So item number 7 is the performance monitoring report. Comes under you, James, but I don't know if Helen's going to. Yeah, if you like, yeah. And I think while Helen's doing that, at the People's Scrutiny this morning, obviously I think we had a very good debate. And one of the things that was mentioned was that as we build and increase the performance data, so it will reduce the size of the reports. And I think it will be much more informative for people when we're actually looking at these things. You can actually see the data, and especially in relation to our work with the ICS. So once the ICS, we're talking about mental health this morning, once they get together with our commissioners and actually have some performance data on that, I think it's going to really help us a lot in identifying specifically where we want to look. Right, there you go, Helen. Pass over to you now.
Does Councillor Macy want to introduce
the
report?
Sorry, Robert. You've been very.
Don't worry. No problem. So yeah, you've got the Q2 report in front of you. I think you'll note from the report we're making progress in terms of the number of indicators. Not all of them are easy to get hold of, as Helen will attest to, across the services, but work is progressing on them, so there's more than last time. I think the other main things are, I can only see that there are 3 exceptions this time round. I'm sure Helen's going to go through those, but obviously one of them falls under my portfolio, so I'll be happy to pick that up as we go through, if you like.
Okay, Rob.
Okay.
Thank you. Right. I think that's back to you then, is it, Helen?
Can't bring a report up on my screen.
Oh, right. Okay. That's technology.
Yes, I think as Councillor Macy said, that there are only 3 exceptions highlighted, although there are, as noted in the report, there are more indicators that are showing as red, and that's because they're recent indicators that are being brought in, they're baselined, and they are based on annual figures that come in, so they will shift as we get the latest figures coming through at the appropriate times this year. So in terms of the exceptions, so HO6, which is the balanced budget. So obviously, you know, we've talked about already, so probably don't need to talk about it anymore. HO18, which is to do with our cyber training certification. So we're monitoring that closely. We are required to get to a 95% compliance level on cyber training. We're at 83.9. IT are monitoring that, and they are looking at putting in I guess some harsher restrictions in terms of if people don't complete their training, there will be an amnesty, and then at some point their accesses will be revoked. So that tried the carrot, now the stick's going to come out.
And I presume that's across the piece. That's not just members. That's everybody.
That's it. That's
which is more difficult because that's a lot of people. Yeah.
Yeah, and then obviously there's a note in there that obviously we have to take into consideration people who are on long-term sick, staff turnover, people coming and going, and then it's, obviously we've got to get that training in place. The other one is there's HO11, which is to do with the staff turnover in the last quarter. There's a note there that said that this is largely attributed to seasonal resignations within Shire services, catering services. And where are we there? And leavers due to the end of the school year. So it tends to be a lot of turnover, as school years end and new starters come in, and Shire services as well. And then the final one is is a note that HP33A, which was the residential admissions for the 18 to 64s. That was an exception last quarter. That is now, as plans were in place to mitigate that, and that has now come back in line with our expected numbers, and that one is now flagged as green.
Okay, so what's been happening is Roger and I have been meeting up with Helen and Rob as well, isn't it? Yeah. To look at adding additional performance indicators as quickly as we can in the areas that as members we think are most relevant. That work's ongoing. But if anybody, wants to talk to Roger and I at any time, we'll certainly bring it up when we meet up. But we are well on the way to getting some fairly decent indicators there. So unless there's any particular questions, Julia.
Yeah, so in the words of the report, it referred to indicator HEN11, the streetlights, but actually when you came onto it, I think it's a typo, it refers to HO11, which was a different one. But I was interested to have a look at the streetlights converted to LED, because there is a huge amount of complaints from residents whose SOX lights have been cut down, sawn in half, their sodium lamps when the bulb goes and needs converting. The lamppost has been sawn in half and is standing on their street. And in many cases, we're now in the 4th month, and they have 3 or 4 in a row. I know that they're sent out to a separate contractor because it's a very specific task to have to replace the whole column with LED lights. But the delays to having them installed is getting absolutely unbearable. Now, the clocks have gone, we're in November, it's dark at 5:20. We've got elderly and vulnerable residents who say they won't go out at night because if you've got a cluster of 3 or 4 streetlights, I'm not talking they're out, they have been removed. There is now these dark spots around not just my division, all the other divisions I'm visiting for other reasons. I'm hearing it a lot on the doorstep when I'm canvassing in lots of different places. So even in Shrewsbury, this is a problem. Last night at Minsterley Parish Council, in my own area in Bridgenorth, this is a widespread problem. There is some serious delay with this contractor. And when we click into the indicator, what do we see? It's one of the ones we don't have any detail on. We just have 69%. Frankly, 69% is not good enough, is it? Because that's the 31% of people who are whinging to me that it's pitch black and they're scared to leave their house. Whatever the problem with that contractor is, we need to resolve it. And the contract manager needs to have very clear expectations of the timeline that is in our service level agreement, because whatever the timeline is, it's not good enough. They're either breaching that, in which case we can have some money back, or we'll go to a different contractor, or we've not got strict enough guidelines. And I'd like to understand which it is, please.
Okay, so if you spoke to Dan Morris about this, Julian?
Can I just come in briefly?
Yeah, of course you can.
I think it's the time to put a cross on the calendar because I actually agree with Councillor Buckley.
Hooray! Welcome to the team.
I spoke at length at this with my town council and different boards who actually have responsibility for half the streetlights in the town.
Yeah.
And they have exactly the same problems of resolving the streetlights as Shropshire Council does. And it is not just the contracts that we've got, it's the national contracts. And a lot of them are the issues around national grid, Western Power. And a lot of it's around supply. And believe you me, we've got all sorts of problems with national grid. And if we could solve that contract out nationally, it's something we might need to take to MPs.
Yeah,
because, you know, they are creating an awful lot, not just for Shropshire Council, but for local councils too.
Okay, because that is an issue clearly. Roger?
Yeah, I don't know about problems with National Grid, problems in Shropshire. One of the main roads in my patch have got 3-4 lights out. They've been out for 18 months. One of them is yellow, just waiting for it. If I drive in towards Ponsbury, there's a line of white lights and then a yellow light. We were assured by the cabinet members that it was on programme to be completed by the end of March, but the expectation was that it would be done this year for the whole of Shropshire. Where are we? We are now in November, another 6 weeks till the end of the year, and we were assured by the cabinet member they would all be replaced. All the sodium lights would be replaced by LED lights, and so save this council money. This council is spending money needlessly on these yellow lights when they shouldn't be there. They should have been converted some time ago. That's another story. But if we've got revenue problems, those yellow lights are costing a lot of money.
Rob wants to say something. Rob?
Just from my point of view and trying to understand, and we're getting the indicators right, going back to Councillor Buckley's point of 31% of people being in the dark, the way I'm reading this is that's the percentage of streetlights converted to LED. So there'll be a huge number of people on the old lighting system still where they're still working, plus the others, and then there will be these people that they're in the middle in that process. So just from my point of view of making sure our indicators are right, is that the right understanding of that as a figure?
Yeah, I think you've got it right.
It's my understanding that it's the right indicator. I mean, perhaps we need this in terms of Roger's question about sustainability and efficiency. Another very important indicator is how many are waiting to be replaced, because that number is incredibly high.
Yeah, so I think I think it'll take a little bit of thought. We can certainly discuss it, but I think the thing is it's about the length of time that you've got a street light down, and the length of time to convert it, and how you translate that into an indicator. I don't know. We'll have to ask the question on that. Yeah.
Okay.
Cecilia.
Yeah, I'd like to make a very constructive suggestion, which is that you follow the Corvedale and have no street lights at all.
It's certainly very green. Okay, you happy with that?
I think maybe the appropriate scrutiny committee needs to take up, and it may be Joyce's, not sure, about streetlights and the conversion to LED, and just get somebody to look at it. Whether it's a brief report, direct to scrutiny, I'm not sure.
Yeah, and I think actually it would be better going to Joyce in the first instance, for Joyce to understand the issue, and Joyce can come back to us and suggest the best way to show it in the performance indicators. Yeah.
The only question I would ask is, oh, sorry, through you, Chair.
Yeah.
The only question I would ask is, what is it that we're looking for? Because we're trying to get away from just having briefings or.
No, I think
if we've got no outcome.
Yeah, well, I think the outcome would surely be I think you need to understand
why it takes so long.
What we can do about it, and how we can keep people informed about when the lights are going to actually be done in their particular area.
That's good.
Yeah.
Is it grid? Is it our contractors? doing it or anything like
Nobody
this.
does
It's just
that,
Yeah.
I've got to use the word, point the finger and say, please sort it.
Yeah, because actually what might be more useful is a little map there that shows which area they're working and where they're going to be next. I don't know, Joyce, but are you happy with that?
Yeah, I am. Yeah.
Okay, oh, we've got two more. Alan?
Yeah, it's not just a question of whether they convert to LEDs, it's a question of LEDs do also go wrong.
Yeah.
The question of how long it takes to repair these. That's a stipulation in the contract that says, I don't know, 10 days or whatever. That is not being satisfied by Kia who are doing this. And it raises that point that may lead you on to generally, in terms of to what extent is part of the transformation programme dealing with the way in which we monitor and control our contractors. Street scene is absolutely appalling and it's becoming deteriorating increasingly over the last 3 or 4 years. We control litter collection, bins, all that sort of thing. It's not as high level of social care, but still, nevertheless, it vastly impacts on the way in which we see our town and the way people coming into our towns and villages see us. But it's asked what efforts are being made to take control from more control over our contractors across the piece in this regard.
Yeah,
Thanks. Yes, it's one of the projects that we're putting forward for scope and then delivery because we see it as a significant issue. So we spend around over 400 million on third parties, and we want to make sure we optimise that. So what we need to understand is, it's similarly to the example we've given, what's the current state? How good are we currently delivering it or not? Where are we underperforming, and what can we do about it? And then a decision on whether we commission that in, i.e. we spend the money and buy it through a contract, or whether there are other models to deliver. So in essence, we need to understand the problem, and then we choose the transformation project that solves that problem for us. And what we're doing at the moment is we're trying to understand the problem. But you're right, it's about better third-party spend, better contract management, and then making sure we optimise every pound that we provide or we spend.
Okay. Roy?
Yeah. So,
sorry. Yeah. Go on.
Sorry. Go ahead. Can I just carry on? Yeah. So, can we expect then that we will receive some sort of report in the not too distant future about the outcome of these investigations? Because I can certainly give you a catalogue of complaints in my areas. Most people could, I'm sure, about bad performance and lack of any monitoring of that of the contract. Are we going to expect a report? I know I've been raising questions about street scene, and I understand that somebody has been appointed to look at this in street scene. But there's no sort of clear timeline as to when this has been done or how it's being done, or whether we're going to be consulting about the defects that we find day in, day out on the streets, pardon the pun. But is there any objective or any timeline that can tell us more about the work that's being done at this?
Could we not fit it into Joyce's report? Because I think that would be better. It would G you up to actually get it done quicker. What do you think, Joyce?
I think as part of that as well, we need to look at Fix My Street and the way that's working. So I have brought that up in the last few days, and I've seen it not working as efficiently as it should. So I'd like to add that in, and I'd like to know. I have sent you an email, but you didn't see it.
Chairman.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I have sent you an email, Steve. Yeah. Well, I have sent you an email, Gina's got a message asking you whether Fix My Street actually has any sort of indicators or performance measurement. But you probably haven't seen that.
I haven't seen it yet.
No. Yeah. Okay. Yes, if we can add that in, that'd be really good.
Because I think it is part of it. Thank you, Alan. Yeah. Roy?
Yeah, it's just we seem to concentrate a lot then on lighting columns that have been converted. I'd still like to see a separate monitor on lighting repairs and replacements.
That's the point of it.
Well, that's the point.
Yeah, I'm just coming in on that one because certainly in Market Drayton we've had 18 months of stumps and highway lighting that doesn't work. And, you know, you see the vans going past doing absolutely nothing about it.
Okay, all right then. So I think that's a very good outcome, Joyce.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. So thank you, Helen and Steve, for presenting your report. And I think we will note the report and send all the lighting stuff to Joyce. I presume somebody's minuted everything that we're sending to Joyce. We've got quite an armful there, Joyce.
Tom's looking very happy.
Yeah. Billy's smiling. You're smiling when you know what you've got to do. Yeah. Okay, and thank you very much indeed, Rob, for your input as well. Are you content with that?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely fine with me. I'm going to send Joyce an interesting article on how you can remotely monitor the status of your street light.
Oh,
That might
okay.
be something they want to look at.
I'll look out through the window.
That's too easy, I think.
Yes.
Yes, I do.
Picking that up, I presume Rob is aware that when the conversions first started, the LED lights when they went in were monitored from the central depot, and they could tell when the lights went out, and they needed to do it. They needn't go out to check.
Well,
but that has since been abandoned.
oh right, okay.
And
So they're
now
putting up
the LED lights just go in, and there's no remote monitoring of them.
Okay, so Billy's made a note of that in his little black book. Yeah. Keep him busy. Okay, so is everyone happy that we note that report? Yep. Okay, so item number 8 is the financial strategy 24-25 to 28-29. James.
Sorry, Chair.
Oh, sorry, Glenn. Yeah.
Just very briefly, if I may, Councillor William Butler, Portfolio Holder for Finance and Corporate Resources. Just a brief introduction. This report was discussed at length at Cabinet, but I do feel it's valuable to have another conversation as we're in the room and have just seen the Q2 output report on our financial journey. The MTFS, our financial journey, is now projecting further to 28-29, and we must, as stated previously, make ourselves fully aware of the pressures and hurdles coming forward in the future so we can get ourselves best placed to control the situation and put mitigation in place to maintain the sustainability of the authority. We are already cited on the pressures next financial year 24-25 and will bring forward these to our mitigation proposal in later reports as developed. The majority of these are around social care, where some new processes, as explained, are already becoming a depressure valve. We need to understand how far they will go and how they and new processes can be developed. The message is definitely we are on the case. I welcome Scrutiny's input and a constructive conversations around the areas of interest. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Colin. Roger.
Thank you, Chairman.
Sorry, beg your pardon.
Thank you, Chairman. It does make interesting reading, and I do note that what Councillor William referred to, that in 24-25, the difference between income and expenditure is increased from 1.1 to 23.6, and 25-26. It's increased from 2.2 to 21 million pound. So, and I do note the council, the decisions that will eventually arrive at council, which cabinet will be looking at, where it says about the environment savings plans, some are in excess of £1 million. But it is, what I would like to know is how that is going to be done. I will watch the cabinet report when it brings out the draft financial strategy for 24-25 to see how this £23.6 million is going to be managed. Because I don't know, I haven't got any information, and that is why I am wondering about whether the ability to bring forward an alternative budget. Because if this budget here is showing a £23.6 million overspend, if I'm going to bring an alternative budget together, I've got to tackle that. And I just have not got the information. If I had the information, I would. but the cabinet are spending time looking at it, days looking at it, I would expect, with officers. As a member of the opposition, I have not got that capacity, ability, availability to do it. But as I say, I note those values. I see the note about the collection fund, and I raised the question earlier on this afternoon about earmarked reserves, which is in this report on page 78. What is considered to be the minimum amount that should be in the earmarked reserves? We hear a lot about the general reserves and how that needs to be in a certain level. But the way I read this report is that we will rob the earmarked reserves of cash in order to balance a budget, in order to leave the general reserves available to use. And it's Peter and Paul comes to my mind. So what is the minimum level of earmarked reserves which are considered to be safe, needed? Because they have reduced by £40 million between 22 and 23. They're less than, well, they're 31.7 according to this report. I'll leave it at that, Chairman.
Okay, I think perhaps I get James to answer that question.
Thank you, Chair. So the earmarked reserves are very different to the general fund balance, and they're held for a number of different reasons. So if we take the severe weather reserve, for example, that's one of the earmarked reserves that we hold. If every year we were in a position that the highways budget could cope with the winter pressures that occur every year, you could argue there's no need to hold any earmarked reserve around severe weather. Alternatively, if you then plan over a period of a longer period of time and say, you know, a 20-year event would cost whatever, or would have an impact on the network of whatever, then you can estimate what that would be. There are other types of earmarked reserves whereby we are talking about a plan or a programme of works that takes place over a longer period than 12 months. And in that case, you know, a project could be a 3-year project. It could be that £5 million is held in earmarked reserves, and that will be spent over that 3-year period. Again, there's a question to be asked, well, does that need to be delivered over 3 years, or is it a higher priority to use that money in another way, and perhaps spread that development over 4 years or 5 years, or fund it in a different way? So there is no clear minimum as to what the level of earmarked reserves should be. They're much more about, they're there for a purpose, and the question that can be asked is that purpose A, still valid, and B, is that purpose still a priority? The general fund balance is a very different beast, in the sense that that is there to ensure that the overarching position of the authority has some element of safety and robustness around it. So in short, there is no minimum figure for earmarked reserves. It is really just a case of what is the assessment against each individual reserve, and can that stand up to scrutiny?
Chairman.
Yes, sure.
So, as a Section 151 officer, you're saying that you would be content to have nil on the earmarked reserves if that was the case that was needed for this year in order to balance the budget and leave the general reserves up at a level where it is being predicted at present. If the budget was overspent by 23, 24, 25 million, all the earmarked reserves could be used, and you would be content as a 151 officer for that to happen.
Yeah, James. I don't think he's going to agree to that. No. I don't think he's going to agree to that.
That's not what I said. I mean, I could envisage a scenario where we had zero earmarked reserves. It is possible that there are ways and means in which that could happen, that would simply be cases where there are no ongoing projects over a longer period of time. Budgets are sufficient to cover events to expected, unexpected events, if that makes sense, over a period of time, and the general fund balance was sufficient to cover that. So there is an argument you could say that. I didn't say that. And what I'm saying is that if there is a particular project, let's just, there's a project that's there, I gave an example of £5 million over 3 years. If the decision was taken, that doesn't have to be delivered over the next 3 years. Would I be content to take that £5 million out of that reserve on the basis that there would then be a reconsideration of that priority and a reconsideration of the funding of that priority going forward? Then yes, I would. Because there would be the consequence of doing that compared to the consequence of not doing it, on balance, would be the correct thing to do. There may be other examples where the exact opposite would be true. So I can't answer the question as a generalisation. All I can give you is that that's the examples of how we would consider it, and the outcome of that will be based on all of those individual decisions amalgamated together to give an overarching position. And in theory, yes, that could result in a reduction in reserves. It could result in an increase in reserves, and anything in between.
Gwyneth, you wanted to say something?
Just on this actual subject, I think it's interesting that a lot of this information was in the previous report, especially around the earmarked reserves. And I get where Roger is going. I'm comfortable using earmarked reserves as a short-term issue while we find the overall mitigation to solve the long-term problem, if that makes sense. So it gives us more time to do that. But if we were just to bring things back into clarity, if we were to use the earmarked reserve to solve the 23 million problem next year, it hadn't solved it for 25-26, it hadn't solved it for 26-27, and we've still got to reduce the spend or increase the revenue to get out of the problem. The reserves aren't going to be there forever. So whilst it's a short term to spread the time we've got to solve the actual revenue problem, I'm not comfortable of getting into that arena all the time.
Yeah, okay.
Last one, Chairman.
Yeah,
that is where I was heading. Right?
Yeah.
Earlier on this afternoon, I said it appears in an earlier report, short-term funding can occur. So that in essence is a loan against future future income, if I can use that, for future years. So it's only it is there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is a very difficult one. Julia.
I've got two questions. My first one's also about that general fund balance. So the current prediction is that we'd start the year with 20, that next year we'll have this deficit of 23 million. And the work that you're doing to balance the books this year is trying to end up with a reserve, if you like, of 23 million, because that's between the 15 and the 40. But if it's immediately neutralised in the new year against the deficit, I don't consider that we do have that cushion that we're supposed to have. So that's one concern. My second concern relates to this, as Williams described, this sort of future look. We can see that deficit going forward year on year, can't we? I mean, it's lovely to see that you think it's going to taper off, so that's good. But nonetheless, it is a predicted additional cumulative deficit in each of the 5 years in the medium plan. I forgot what I was going to say. It seemed very important. Deep breath. Come back. No, it's gone.
It'll taper off. We've got to change the government.
No.
I'll come back to you.
You're clearly too busy going around all these different things. Right, okie dokie then. So is there
Can you answer
anyone
the first question? Sorry, about would it be an adequate level of reserve if in fact it's immediately neutralised?
Yeah, okay, I was going to say.
So yeah, through your chair. No, that would be adequate. If we plan to have on the 1st of April 23 million pounds worth of reserves, but we're actually planning to use that straight away, then we won't be planning to have 23 million pounds worth of reserves. So the plan as it stands at the moment would be to maintain a level of general fund balance in the order of 15 and 30 million pounds. So ideally, it starts with a 2 is where you would kind of pitch that. And to have a balanced funding position going forward. So if the position wasn't balanced and we had to use general fund balance, then we wouldn't be quoting a figure of 23 million pounds in general fund balance. We've been quoting the figure after that usage. So that's not the case.
You remembered.
Yeah.
Well done.
Thank you for your patience. It's about the in-year pressures. So what you described as additional service demand, which some of us believe comes from the cost of living crisis. So there's extra pressure on services. So if I've correctly understood it, and perhaps I haven't, the budget as was set out, the base budget for this year didn't include those additional service pressures. They occurred, they happened to us as an external shock as the year went along. So I'd like to know whether the projected future years, whether they are based on the base budget plus future projections, or whether they have also factored in the amongst the assumptions that additional service pressure will also continue next year if we're still in a cost of living crisis, if austerity continues, pending what could happen in future elections.
Ben will be able to provide you with the detail, but the simple answer is the inflationary impact that's been identified this year. There is an assumption that will carry on for a period of time into the future, and therefore things like pay and prices, inflation estimates for next year have been significantly increased, and that's set out in the report. And is basically the driver for the £24 million gap next year. So if the inflation that we're seeing hadn't been there or didn't carry on into next year, we would have had a pretty much balanced budget for 24-25.
So it's not quite what I'm asking. Sorry, I understand about inflationary pressures. I'm asking about service demand. So throughout the report, you talk about additional, unexpected, higher than usual demand on adult and social services and children's services, I believe caused by the cost of living crisis. They're not to do with inflation. They're not in the base budget. Has anybody included that could happen or could continue to happen to us amongst the assumptions for these future years?
So the in-year pressure is taken into account when in the following years.
It's not in these predictions.
Ben, is that right?
Thank you, Chair. So if I could refer you to figure 5 in the appendix 1 of the NTFS and the paragraphs below it. We talk about the funding gap and the second paragraph. So my version, what I'm looking at the moment, page 9, bottom of page 9, last paragraph on page 9, key area of focus is the level of demographic and demand growth in social care, marked in the table above as to be confirmed. This is a pressure across local government as a sector. We're not different in that respect, workers in hand to identify, etc., which leads on from the discussion that we just had in quarter 2. So if you then go up to figure 5, you can see quite clearly 24, 25, 25, 26, etc. There's a series of TBCs across there. So simply to answer your question, as it sets out in the report, the 23.6 does not yet include whatever the net impact is in terms of demand pressure arising from social care. What I would take there, however, to clarify, I understand your perspective around cost of living and whether or not that's part of the pressure. That has not surfaced at all as part of the conversation I'm having with the services around whether that's playing through. From their perspective, it is much more to do with either sheer weight of numbers and or complexity. There is an argument, particularly in the children's area, that cost of living could be if you like, an exacerbating factor, which leads to family crisis, which leads to etc. So understand that point completely, and that's something that the children's work in particular is looking at in terms of the early help points, which we raised and rehearsed just now in the quarter 2 discussion. But in terms of the adults discussion, that's not a feature of that aspect of it.
Thank you. That's really helpful. And can I say, although it's disappointing that there's no number included in the figures, so in other words, we haven't prepared for the number, I am reassured that you prepared for the concept. So that reassures me that the line is in there, you know it's going to be a problem, you've yet to work out what the number is. So that you reassure me that you're on the case with that.
Absolutely.
We all should be worried about how big that number is. When I say cost of living, perhaps I should be more transparent. Austerity has led to some of these issues.
And I think they couldn't not take it into account because they've got to give it a full and fair view. Otherwise, they'll be in prison. Right, Joyce, do you want to say something?
Yeah, I think it's really good that we have the chief executive here today who hasn't said anything yet. And the head of the organisation, I'd like to ask you, how do you feel about these figures and the finances and what your concerns are?
Well, there you go.
How long have you got?
Yeah.
I was the expert speak this afternoon on that. In all honesty, what this looks like is the we've had this conversation previously around what the projections look like. These projected figures are based on halfway through this financial year, looking into the crystal ball for the end of this financial year and then the following financial year. So these are best, no matter what anybody says, and with all due respect to my professional colleagues either side of me, these are best guess projections. That's what it is. I am confident because they are pretty much based on worst case scenarios of if we are at this point in time and we take no further action, this is what the financial future looks like. That's what's been described in front of you. So the confidence I have, actually in the detail, this is why Billy's here as well, representing the OCE and the partnership with PwC around all the activity that we take between now and the end of this financial year, and then the programme of activity for the next financial year, we'll see that figure reduce and we'll see our financial position improve, is where I get my confidence from. Now, I can't say that with any more certainty than that, because I have no idea what the future holds. If the past 12, I'm going to say 12 months, but if the past 2 years is anything, 4 years is anything to go on, then it's fairly difficult, because who could have seen COVID, Ukraine, everything else. So that's the world that we live in. It's volatile, it's difficult to manage. I think what we've done is presented a very pragmatic view of the world. There's no spin in there. I'm satisfied that what's been presented to you is a realistic / worst case scenario. It's certainly pessimistic, and that's good. I would much rather do that and then work hard on here. We're balancing the message to the organisation, which says, and I come from this morning speaking at the GLR event this morning again, saying to staff and leaders of the organisation, this is a huge mountain we have to climb. I need to balance that message but we have a plan, and we have a way through this. We're sticking to the plan. You've seen the kind of investments that we continue to make in terms of development of the organisation and support for the staff to deliver this. And I think we are now seeing the benefits, because don't forget, halfway through this financial year, to have delivered some 70% of what we intended to at this stage is nothing short of amazing. Don't forget that the £51 million was an enormous target. And again, please compare that with other authorities. We are an outlier in terms of the scale of that. So to achieve that at this point, really good. Sure, it's going to get harder as we get to the end of the financial year, and then next year, with all its challenges ahead, we're going to have to work really hard and think very hard and make some difficult decisions about how we get to that point. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yes, can I just add? Can I just add that as a member of the council, that I think staff have done an amazing job over the last few years under really difficult circumstances, and I think it's big for everyone, actually. Thank you.
That's appreciated. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay then, so is everyone happy that we note that report? I think, big thank you to Ben and James, because it is very difficult. We do appreciate all the hard work they do. And Gwynn, of course. Never far away.
No, I'm just here.
Never far away. Okay. Thank you. Right. Capital strategy. James, are you going to talk a little bit about? I know we've got Nick here.
Can I introduce it, please, Chair?
Pardon?
Can I introduce it?
You can introduce it. I think Nick might want to say a few words. He's here. I don't know.
Right. The report outlines the capital strategy and aspirations of the council moving forward for the medium and long term. As stated at council, I welcome Scrutiny's input into the strategy and welcome any further capital proposals to be brought forward for investigation to the capital strategy, and if agreed and funded, further onto the capital programme. I think it's useful, as a lot of the conversation is picked up around investment into the county town, which is rightly so, as it will and has attracted major government funding, where the rest of the county may not, although we have seen some in Oswestry. This has a major impact on the whole county by increasing our revenue streams, housing, building allocation, economic development in the county town, creating jobs, income and housing, which will have a positive impact on our finances, which can be spent county-wide, but it will maintain the vibrance which is Shrewsbury into a further thriving town for this 21st century. But that is not the whole story, and I want to expand a little bit more, because this council is not just about Shrewsbury. It's not just about the county town, and I want to reiterate there's an anticipated 93.8 million capital investment into the whole of the county outside Shrewsbury, which includes 42 million for county-wide highways, 30 million for county-wide primary and secondary schools, 11 million for county-wide housing, a lot of this linked to Conovi, 11 million to support enhancement for economic growth and broadband across the county, and 4 million in the county's leisure centres, a lot of which include places like Bishop's Castle, Whitchurch, you know, places across this county. And I noticed Alan mentioned earlier that we'd lost £268 million from government, but this administration is investing almost as much back into its capital strategy. So for the future. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Nick, did you want to say anything? I know you come along.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Okay, does somebody want to pass you a mic, or you can come to the table if you like, by Joyce?
Yeah, you sit here if you want. Go sit in there. Sit here.
It's all right.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm serving on the task and finish group. We've had 2 meetings, a preliminary meeting, and then the first actual roundtable meeting last week, and another, I think, substantial meeting on Friday morning this week. So I think 2 issues which we've raised but haven't yet discussed in detail are worth just mentioning here. The first is a review of business plans. We have many business plans, and you know, sometimes they work brilliantly, sometimes they don't work quite so well. But what I think is a lesson I've picked up from serving on the combined authority, the West Midlands Combined Authority ARAC committee, is that it would be prudent to look at in a fairly systematic way after the event how business plans have actually panned out. Some of them work splendidly, some of them are much delayed, and I think our concern on the task and finish group is that if we don't review them on a systematic basis, then we risk making the same mistakes and not learning from the experiences of earlier business plans, particularly with capital strategies. And the example I gave in the dim and distant past now, when I was a member of cabinet, we introduced a programme of building new children's homes for all sorts of good reasons, for the benefit of the children, of course, that they would be in children's establishments in Shropshire rather than perhaps in Yorkshire or even in Scotland in 1 or 2 instances, but also because it was more cost effective. Now, I know for sure that that programme, however much it's still in progress, it is slipped very significantly in terms of delivery periods. And I think we ought to ask ourselves the question, why is there any sort of consistent pattern as to why the excellent plan has been delivered, but maybe not a few months late, but several years late. I gave one example. It happened to be from my own electoral division, where a property was purchased in Ryton 11 Towns without, I'm sorry to say, the agreement of the then cabinet member, that wasn't me, and indeed without asking for my thoughts or opinion on the property. And perhaps if those questions had been asked, we wouldn't have bought the property. It had a planning history as long as your arm. And in the end, the Director of Children's Services herself, Karen Bradshaw, decided to abandon the entire project after 7 or 8 months. Now, All I'm saying is, I'm not saying this is common, but we ought to try and learn from these things. And as I say, on the Combined Authority Audit and Risk Assessment Committee that I serve on, we systematically review business plans and we look to see how well they've been delivered. And it does seem to me with capital projects, that is a worthwhile exercise. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. There's always a welcome contribution from me. Right. Has anybody else got anything to say on the capital strategy? Or... No? Oh, yes?
Yeah. I know there's a special meeting on the 29th when we'll be looking at it and looking at the report that Nick is producing, I assume. I do know how. 27th then, is it?
I think it is. Oh, 4th of December, that's it. And there's an extra meeting on the 27th of Feb. There you go, Roger.
I thought it was mentioned somewhere. I saw the 29th of November somewhere. Yeah.
That meeting was this one.
Are you talking about the dates, Alan, or?
No.
No, okay.
Yeah, I'll just,
The 4th of December.
Yeah, so you've got, you've got a whole rush of meetings coming through now. So, yeah, the 29th was the original meeting for this committee, but that was brought forward to today so that you could see the quarterly reporting before it goes to Cabinet. The 27th is the kick-off meeting for the Transformation and Interim Financial Strategy Task and Finish Group. And there's an additional meeting in this committee on the 4th of December to receive reports such as the Capital Strategy Task and Finish Group report. So that comes through this committee before it goes on to Cabinet as part of the budget setting process.
So did you want to say something else?
Yeah, I do note that in the paper it says that there's new schemes brought forward, not fully reviewed, etc. 159 million. Have I missed it? Have those been listed anywhere, or are they still being looked at before being brought forward?
I don't know. I'll have to ask James that question.
Yep. So the 159. Sorry, the screen was blank. 159 million. Sorry, what might be going on? That's referred to in paragraph 2.6. The details of which are shown in Appendix D. It says. So if you turn to Appendix D, that breaks down the 159 million pounds, which is I think the last appendix of the report.
Aspirational page 96 and 97.
Okay, you got that.
Yeah.
So working my way around, Julia, and then Julia.
I've got three issues I've picked up in the report. My first comment is about what happened in the last full council meeting and what it says on the front of this report, which is that the appendices to this capital report have been amended, and they've been amended from the error which was put forward to members at the last council meeting, in which we were asked to vote for a revised capital scheme which included a line which said £95 million, but there was no words, no information, no report, no documents. And every leader of every opposition group queried it. We asked Brian Williams, as the chair of audit, if he thought it was appropriate for us to vote on it. And Gwilym Butler and Dan Morris defended that vote and started to talk about why the North West Relief Road was necessary and why this was about having a vision for the town. We were not actually talking about the detail of the content of any of the capital schemes. We were saying it was not appropriate for anybody to ask any member to vote to spend any money where there is not a report. And I can't emphasise enough how serious that moment was. I'm delighted to see that there is an upfront acknowledgement of it here, and that this now is a correct document. But it really is very serious. What was serious is that Cabinet members defended the vote and that Conservative members were whipped to vote in favour of spending any money where there was not a report. I don't know how else to explain it.
So hold on a minute, Julia. I'm going to have to say something here. You have your opinions and views, and clearly a lot of other people have different opinions and views. And I think our late Queen said, what did she say? Recollections may vary. And I think they certainly do here, Julia. So if you want to ask a question about the paper that's in front of us, ask it. Because I'm not interested in what happened before. What happened before happened at council. If you want to ask a question at council, ask it there, but not here.
I have three
Gwyneth,
questions on the report.
did you want to say something?
Just very briefly, in some ways I can understand Councillor Buckley's confusion. There's a complete difference between the capital strategy and the capital programme. Capital strategy is our aspirations of what we might like to do in the future, but we wouldn't actually financially vote on it until we've got a full business case. But we have to be being prudent. I've spoken a lot today about having a strategy for the future, what we're going to do in the future, what might happen. And so we need to start preparing ourselves as we do through the Treasury report. We needed to borrow money, it would cost us this. And by getting all that information, we try to get a decision. So as it was in the strategy and not actually in the programme, I didn't really have a big issue because we weren't actually voting on physically saying, let's go and write the cheque. It wasn't such a big issue. Now, I get where Julia's coming from as well. I took and Dan did personal advice from the monitoring officer and the Section 151 officer, and I believe what I stated in the question to Cabinet was correct. And I can't do more than that.
Okay, so hold on a minute.
It's really helpful.
Okay, so that's that.
Could I just ask whether the advice? Could I just ask whether the advice was the advice before you spoke or after you spoke?
What?
The advice from the Section 151 in monitoring.
Spoke where?
In full council.
No, it wasn't a full council. It
I know.
was your question to Cabinet.
Woo, that's it. You can take after this.
It's when you
You've
raised the
got
issue.
2 more questions.
But you said we were spending the money,
Woo,
but we weren't.
that's enough. Julia, 2 questions.
It's really helpful.
Thank you.
It's really helpful to understand Gwyneth's perspective on that moment in time. Okay, I have 3 questions. So firstly, £3.1 million on an IT replacement fund. That seems an incredible amount of money spent in replacing IT. Is that a one-off cost that perhaps comes around every 10 years and we won't be subjected to such a high cost again? Or is that something that we're going to be subjected to on a regular basis? I find that an incredibly high amount of money when we are looking to make savings. Secondly, sure it's one that Alan Mosley will have some concerns about, and most Shrewsbury members will. £25 million states the replacement of swimming at the quarry with a replacement of swimming within Shrewsbury. So not transparent wording, but wording which rather implies that the quarry swimming pool will be replaced with a swimming pool elsewhere in Shrewsbury. I find that incredible for 2 reasons. 1, because of the strength of feeling about the quarry pool itself, but 2, because this council has just spent hundreds of thousands of pounds to repair the roof on the swimming pool at the quarry. So if we're going to talk about efficiency and long-term decisions about spending money wisely, why are we spending hundreds of thousands of pounds if you have a secret plan to close down the quarry and open a pool elsewhere? And my final question is rather similar, is our old friend Shirehall, now called Refocus. The relocation of Shirehall to the multi-agency hub, £41 million. I'm very sure that figure was not included in the options appraisal when we compared the costs of closing Shirehall and opening the multi-agency hub, when we compared that with the cost of refurbing Shirehall. And I'm very sure, because we already spent many millions on the new area it's going to go in, and now we've got to add £41 million for the relocation. I think it's time that those costs were combined so that residents can understand what is the total cost of losing this place, of redeveloping Smithfield, and of moving, decanting people in here. We need to have those costs added together as a single project so that residents understand the cost of having the new civic centre in the middle of a cost of living crisis is considerably more than was sold to them when it was originally discussed.
Okay, so are you happy to certainly answer the question? But the first one is as well, I know it seems to me 3 million does sound like a lot of money, but when you think about how many people we actually employ, and I just know I had problems in my laptop this week 2 or 3 times, and I think they're probably about 500 quid a pop. So when you look at it that way, I mean, I don't know, you answer the question, but I know for a big organisation, things happen.
So happy to talk you through the detail on that IT point around the 3.2 million in Appendix C and the kit replacement. So just to explain that, for a number of years, ICT kit replacement has been held in budgets within services. Councillor Buckley, you referred to austerity and cost of living previously. We know about the pressures on council finances. Some of the decisions that have been taken have prioritised frontline, and therefore kit replacement wasn't always a priority. So one of the things that we did to try and safeguard the position of the council and make sure that IT kit was provided in the right way was to centralise those budgets. There wasn't actually an awful lot there. The other difficulty with it was that those budgets had been spent in a particular way, which is often done based on the sense of local service need. So there is a range of different items of IT kit across the authority, running to more than 20 different models. Why am I giving you all of this boring technical stuff? The reason is, at the moment, and for the last few years, we work from home. It's become increasingly important. We are seeing a massive increase in the level of cyber attacks faced by this organisation and plenty of others. And if you have lots of different types of kit out there, it's really, really hard to roll out replacements and updates to the kind of software that you need to keep everybody's laptops safe and to maintain the safety of the data that the council works with. So what we've done is to swap some of the revenue into capital to put together a proposal which is around using some of the existing funding which was there to repurpose it. We have gone through a process in which we've done probably 3 things. So the first one is that we are narrowing down the fleet to a basic offer of about 3 different types of kit, ranging between fairly straightforward up to slightly more specialist. That will mean that we have less problems as we go forwards. The second thing is that we're adopting something called autopilot, which means that rather than all of the work for imaging the machines being done downstairs in Shirehall, it's done by the supplier, or it's just sent out and you log onto your account and it pulls down the entire image for your computer based on a pre-existing set of agreements and the way that we work. So actually, we kind of cut out a lot of the work from the IT team, considerable saving. And the last piece around that is that we then looked at how could we do that in a more effective way. So rather than buying year to year, what we wanted was a 3-year rolling replacement programme, which is what this is about. So we're looking at 3,500 headcount of staff and operating from of around about 2,500 to 3,000 items of IT kit. We need to replace those to keep everybody safe and functioning effectively on a kind of rolling 3-year programme. So we went to Microsoft and said, rather than buying these piecemeal, can we set up a 3-year deal? We set up a 3-year deal. Then we said, if we're setting up a 3-year deal, can we pay for it all up front for a discount? So we did that and we got a discount. And then they said, oh, by the way, we're actually offering a lease package. So that's the cost. We get back about £500 per machine at the end of 3 years. So there's a full business case behind this. It may not have surfaced. Members of the committee probably didn't see that because a lot of that was within the existing process, because effectively we had to replace the kit. That was a part of the decisions that were taken by councillors in prior years through the budgets, IT policies, etc. What we've done is to enact something which keeps all of your working. It keeps everybody safe from cyber attack. It protects the data in the way that we need to be able to protect the data, and it does so on a better financial and economic deal than we've ever been able to manage before. So yes, there's a line in there, but actually it fits in with the wider strategy and it's an improvement on what we've been doing before. So there's no fundamental change to what we've been doing, which is allocating out laptops to everybody, making sure it's fit for purpose. The change from this perspective is talking it through, went through in some detail with Gwilym, and particularly Rob Macy, because it's his area. And Rob was saying, actually, that's quite a good deal because he can see that's a good approach to it, works effectively from that perspective. There is a documented audit trail on all of that, but actually it wasn't needed to bring back anything because all of those amounts were within budgets already. It's simply repurposing those budgets in a slightly different mechanism, but for exactly the same purposes that were previously allocated.
That's really helpful detail. Thank you through you, Chair. So was the first year 22 to 23?
there was an
That year
upfront payment around it. So that what we took advantage of was the opportunity to work both with actually Microsoft's year end. So that was helpful from our perspective. And the fact that unlike many other organisations, because of the nature of local government, there is often a cash flow, which is quite substantial, which means that we could sustain that kind of payment up front. So that was for the first year, it's for the first several years. I can't remember the exact details of the profile on this, but it sets up the deal for the future.
So if 2022 was the first of the 3 years, when the £3 million will cover that entire period, if I've understood.
That's the intention at this point, yeah.
So the next time we would face a cost is 25-26.
And it will be phased through in the nature of the capital programme anyway.
We would expect it to be in the region of £1 million a year.
Thereabouts. It depends. The issue for us initially was that many of the laptops in issue were fundamentally out of date because they've just been other priorities over the last couple of years. So they weren't able to sustain the most recent updates on a lot of Office 365. There was also an issue around that then meant we had a lump of it to replace quickly. This is coming through at the moment. So a lot of this was set up through the last 6 months or so. And we're expecting to see a lot of this start to land across the course of the next 6-12 months. But in the first year, I think rather than doing it kind of thirds, so about 33% per year, the first year we needed to do 50-55% in order to bring up the spec.
Really helpful detail, I really appreciate that. Are we basically accepting that in the future we accept a general cost of at least £1 million a year to enable to keep this rolling replacement programme?
Happy to get to that. I think, and certainly for the medium-term outlook, which takes us out 5 years, the intention is to make sure there is a rolling 3-year replacement programme. We're expecting to continue to work with hybrid office arrangements. Exactly what the configuration of that hybrid means, we're still working that through in different areas. But the important point, first and foremost, is to make sure that we're safe in a cyber context, but also very simply, it's not great for the well-being of staff if their kit doesn't work. It's also not great for the efficiency of staff if their kit doesn't work. So it's a no-brainer from that perspective. The need was to make sure that we could make it work in the background.
Right. A fair bite of the cherry. Alan's next.
Well, Julie was right that I was going to ask about throwing in Shrewsbury and the implications of this, because there were plans, of course, to have a swimming baths at the sports village and also at the quarry with different functions and different characteristics and appealing to different clients. This seems to indicate that the one in the quarry is going under current proposals here, and that will be new provision within Shrewsbury, which presumably would be at the sports village. So is this a change of policy, and has it been discussed and consulted on? And or is it, am I misinterpreting what is a relatively simple sentence says in this report?
Well, that's probably a question for Andy, because I answered that question, and or cabinet.
From my perspective, somebody got a mic on. Oh, that's all right. No. From my perspective, I think we're playing a bit with semantics. There's no actual decisions have been made.
No, okay.
Well, why does
It's a strategy.
they continue with existing plans to provide 2 swimming facilities within the Shrewsbury area and put a figure on that?
Well, no actual decisions, further decisions being made. So it will have to come to cabinet, I presume.
Yeah,
I think so.
Well,
so
I mean, this is extremely important for the people of Shrewsbury. It's been subject to massive debate and confusion and discourse for a number of years, and everybody thought they got something settled. This as a one line in a lengthy document sort of throws all that's happened in the past up for question again. And I, for one, will demand that the council makes a statement on the implications of this priority scheme insofar as the policy on swimming in Shrewsbury is concerned.
But I think there's a cabinet meeting next week, isn't there?
I haven't seen the agenda yet, John.
22nd. I think that's probably a question for cabinet. And Benjo.
Sorry.
But if it would help, I wonder if it's worth getting the context for the discussion right, in the sense that I understand the points which are being raised completely, but the focus of the discussion, as I understand it, is in this meeting around the scrutiny of the way in which the capital strategy is being brought together, and the way it prioritisation is undertaken, the governance of it, the kind of points that Gwilym was drawing out earlier about the difference between strategy and the programme. The issue that we have from the previous council papers, and also running forwards into the report which will come forward again for council in February, is that in February council will be asked to approve the full capital programme and the strategy for going forwards. At the point where this went to council previously, this was still the proposed position, draft position, based on the work that we were undertaking at that point in time. There's a shift in the notification here is that there was an original amount of 25 million against that line, which has gone up to 27 million, which is largely relating to things like some of the inflationary factors which are playing through on this. The fundamental decision in terms of is it one pool, is it two pools, how is that provided within Shrewsbury? Respectfully, I would say probably that's not the discussion which was intended to be had around these papers today, but there is a discussion which needs to be had, but it needs to be had as part of the process of agreeing the proposals which will then come forward through December, January and February, ending up with council in February, with clarity on exactly what the proposal is so that residents understand. Does that help at all?
Well, notwithstanding those technicalities and procedural issues, this is in black and white in what I'm looking at now. And I would welcome an explanation from the Chief Executive about the process you've just described, and when will this issue be opened up for public discussion, given what's happened historically within the Shrewsbury community and the wider Shropshire one for that matter. When will we have further details of what is being proposed here and the change that appears to have happened to thinking within the authority about swimming provision in Shrewsbury? Are you able to do that?
He can do what he likes, I think.
No, I can't. I said, are you able to?
Yeah.
I mean, does he know about it?
Well, I don't know.
Perhaps if you can just on your microphone.
Yes.
Yeah, I think I'll try to answer that question, but I fear I'm going to reiterate actually what Ben's just said.
Yeah, it's the same.
So I think this is just a moment in time what the capital strategy, everything's been put in there as potential within that. Then it goes through the process that Ben's described, which will be a policy decision to be made. That's depending on the value will either be cabinet or goes through to cabinet for full decision making. So I don't think this indicates that any decision has been made around the nature of the funds. That would be a political decision to be made. I think this is a moment in time, as I say, we're at this point, halfway through the financial year, and we're just setting out the capital strategy in its broadest sense. Looks like this at this moment in time. It's not to supersede any decision making now.
But somebody has decided to put this into its capital strategy. It's a bit like the previous issues that Julia raised about the however many million on the Northwest Belief Road thing. Somebody's decided that this goes into it. Now that can't come out of thin air. It must be as a result of some discussion with somebody somewhere. It does seem to me to represent a change of policy. And I'd just like an explanation of why this has got in this document, because this is 22, 23, 27, 28 mid-review.
If I may, Alan.
Yeah.
So if I may, so Ben's helpfully produced, this is from March Council capital strategy, and the line is replacement of existing swimming provision at the quarry with new provision within Shrewsbury, 25 million. So that was in the capital strategy at that date. So this is just kind of in effect a brought forward position of that statement.
Yeah. Well, I greatly regret missing that way back in March. Did that go to council in March?
Yeah.
I see it was in the council, because I did look it up myself. Yeah, in March, yeah, I see it was there, but that was missed there, quite frankly. But I'm picking it up now, and I want to know why it was in the March one that's replicated within the current one. And how that's how that represents change of policy. Because you know I'm in dispute that does indicate that the swing business is moving from the quarry into a new position in Shrewsbury. No way of misreading that or imply or anything. So I can't misconstrue what that was saying.
So I think we're going round in circles. So I think you need to ask this question of the leader at cabinet on the 22nd. There's two more. Roger did have his hand up. Julie, did you want to say something about?
Just on this report, I think that we can ask, and we have got members of cabinet here, and they can give us an assurance that there is no plan to close the Pool Quarry. And I think it's perfectly legitimate that the leader of Shrewsbury Town Council can raise concerns that that he has not been involved in any consultation about such a major part of his town. How can it be that leaders of town councils are reading in a one line, 5 words, such a major change of policy? Either there is a change of policy and it's being put on this aspirational list for a conversation later as a way to avoid consulting with people. We can't continue to keep slipping things under the radar like this.
Hold on a minute, Julia. You've had you say it was voted on at full council in March of this year, so it's not something anybody's just discovered. It's been kicking around for ages. As far as I've heard from the discussions today, no decision has been made. No decision has been made. So the members of cabinet here won't be able to tell you any more than Ben J or anybody else here, James or anything. So you need to.
Rob Macy here.
Yeah, it's a shame. I looked up to see if he's still here and he's not. So you need to ask that. You need to ask that on the 22nd. So I'm going to pass over because we've been going on quite a long time now. Roger, have you got something you want to ask?
We talk about this subject, but really, what put my hand up to start with was on page 87, mid-year capital strategy review considered by transformation, improvement, overview and scrutiny, 29th of November. That's wrong, I assume. It's the 4th of December.
Date of the meeting.
Which is the date of the meeting, so.
Yeah,
so it's in this report, so it needs to be changed in
we'll
this
do
report.
that.
But also, I see the recommendations that are there in 3, 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, the recommendations from this to the cabinet. Maybe we ought to put a recommendation in 3.6 and ask cabinet to define the present policy concerning swimming provision in Shrewsbury as itemised in the capital strategy.
But I'm not minded to do that. I'm just going to note the report. I think you can all go to cabinet next week and have your say.
I'm proposing it as an amendment, Chair.
Oh, okay, propose it.
Recommendation there says 3, 1, 2, 3, 3, 4. Okay, recommend to council. We note that, and also the lines in the capital programme concerning the swimming provision in Shrewsbury, and we would ask the present position to be defined as soon as possible.
Right, so you proposed it, Julia seconded it.
No, she's not.
I think seconded, I have a further amendment, which is that it also be the subject of a deep dive at our task and finish group.
Yeah.
As well.
What task and finish group that's that?
Capital
strategy one.
The capital strategy one. Yeah.
Deep dive, that's
We're all going to have costumes on.
Yeah. Quite late in the day. Right, okay, so you've got two people. You've got two people there. Are you going to you proposed and seconded, all in favour of that amendment? Please put your hand up now.
The damps with.
Yeah.
Why not vote?
Okay. All those okay, 3. All those against? Okay, so that's clearly lost. So we will note the report, Roger. You can all go to cabinet as you always do, and you can ask the question there. I think that's the thing, and because I don't know the answer, nobody knows the answer.
Chairman, if I can, this report is not going to cabinet to start with, is it? we'll be looking at the capital strategy again, I think, on the 4th of December. So what we're asking is that the task and finish group do an investigation as well.
Well, I'm not.
And the minority report, I would suggest that this is taken to them to ask if they want to look at it.
Well, I'm not. I don't sit on the group, so the group can do what they like because it's nothing to do with me.
Can I just make one comment there? This is the first time that I've brought the capital strategy to you midterms. And I hope you recognise that because previously you'd get it in December and have to look at it beforehand. So I'm giving you plenty of time to come forward as part of your budget process. Believe me, the officers work incredibly hard. We don't get a lot of notice on stuff when it comes through to make decisions. Believe you me.
So okay. So it's interesting. They have a go at you, and then they this something themselves as well.
I thought the cabinet set policies, and they set the policies and the work programme for the officers.
Well, we do.
Right. Okay. Right. We've done that one. Okay. So the next is the work programme. So we've got 2 task and finish groups. The one will be the normal standing task and finish group, which I think Billy is going to be quite involved in. Is that right? Yeah. And Ben. Okay. And then we've got the other one as well. Got 2 of them. Do you want? Yeah. Do you carry on, Todd?
Yeah, so as mentioned before, we've got the additional meeting of the committee on the 4th of December, where we'll see the capital strategy task finish group report come back to there and on its way through to get adopted by this committee on its way through to cabinet. We've got an additional meeting added for this committee on the 19th of February. That's to make sure that it takes place before cabinet, so that the quarterly reporting comes through. I would expect or suggest that the report from the transformation of medium-term financial strategy task and finish group, particularly picking up on the medium-term financial strategy and budget piece, is taken to that committee on its way to cabinet as well. And I guess just a bit of a heads up that at the moment the plan is to look at doing the work programming for each of the committees in March, where we can pick up and run with things like the medium-term financial strategy, service improvement plans, potentially strategic top operating model for the council, and the transformation plans as well. So they all can come in and inform the work programming conversations. And just jumping back to that one on the 19th of February, it's I guess there's again an early heads up that there's currently a meeting of this committee in the calendar diary for the 10th of January. And it's going to be a question of whether or not that will need to take place if we've got a meeting on the 19th of February as well, while we're taking the thoughts through. So just to give an early indication that might be
Right, yeah.
Yeah, and it is a question on the 4th of December. Will the updated program outline, whatever words, no detail, but the outline finances at the end of October, will that be available at that time so it can go on that agenda, which was mentioned right at the start of the meetings?
I don't know, James.
October, but then 5 weeks, 6 weeks into since the end of the month, so it's just an update. Whatever words is there, just to etc. to give an indication.
Yeah, do you want to turn your thing off and then James can reply? Thank you.
The information should be available by 4th of December. Yes, we're talking about any information going out a week before to meet the deadline of that. Again, I'll just reiterate, it is only a summary position in relation to the savings. That's fundamentally what we produce on a monthly basis, so there won't be a lot more detail.
So can I just make a suggestion here that we minute it, right? That James will give an oral report on the 4th of December. He can't give you a printed report beforehand because he won't have the information. He gives a verbal update on the 4th.
At least.
Yeah,
we'll try and do it.
Yeah. Is that okay? And then everybody knows there's no...
Whatever is possible.
Yeah.
I know the time scales are tough.
Yeah, no. But James will do the best he can.
Yeah. If I can through you, Chairman, is there anything else that Tom or you think will be going on that 4th of December? We've got the capital strategy, we've got may hopefully report on an update on finances. Is there anything else that will be going on that agenda?
No.
Well, see what comes through. We're trying to sort of work through and see whether we can get anything covered off on the costs and benefits of working in the system. But I think some of the conversations certainly that took place this morning as well at the people committee, I think there's scope to maybe a bit of a deeper look around mental health, which will come through that committee as well.
I mean, I think we've all had an email. There's an Ofsted inspection next week, so that might affect some of the task and finish work. So that's unavoidable. Julia.
I just wondered, based on some of the discussion today about the issues with some of the contractors and contracts that we have, whether another future item for discussion, you know, to go on the aspirational list that we think about later, could be looking at external contracts. So what I mean is that we could start with the list of the largest contracts and understand how the costs have changed and where the issues are, to help us understand if we're getting best value from those contracts.
Yeah, okay. I think the biggest contract we've got is with the area, and we can't get out of that.
But just, I think across the piece, you know, sort of a horizon scan, the top 10, and this is the value of the contract, and this is what it was previously, and you know, just to help us have the broad picture and maybe to do a bit of that digging about whether we're getting best value. We've talked today about the streetlights as an example, haven't we? We have often talked about Kia, and I know there have been some variations, but just for us to start with the big picture and get it on the list as something that could be worth a bit of a deep dive.
Yep, that sounds good. Right.
I'm just aware that officers' time is taken up considerably, and that some items you may be asking for might be too much.
Yeah.
The pressure of that. So I think we need to know whether we're capable of actually doing stuff like that. Is that going to draw in every direction?
I think clarity, I mean, on the work programme. I mean, added as a tax below. That's what I mean.
Yeah. So I think realistically it'll be next year, but I think it's a good idea. And also I think that I'm sure Billy's been digging around in those as well. So I think he's probably done, he's probably done quite a bit of work on that. And I think it's worth having a conversation when we do the task and finish groups about, we can talk briefly about that as well. And that'll help inform the work programme. Okay, thank you very much indeed, everybody. And see you on the 4th. Oh yeah, and good luck to Peggy tomorrow. We hope to bring home a cup.